Imagine climbing aboard a ship in the middle of the ocean. The sails are still set. The cargo is untouched. There is food in the hold, water in the barrels, and a child's toys resting in a cabin. And not a single living soul on board. No bodies. No sign of a struggle. No answer. Just an empty ship, sailing on alone, as if the crew had simply stepped off the edge of the world. This is not a ghost story. It happened in December of 1872, and more than a century later, we still do not know the truth. The ship was called the Mary Celeste. She was an American merchant brigantine, a sturdy two-masted sailing vessel built for the Atlantic trade. On the 7th of November, 1872, she left New York bound for Genoa, Italy, carrying more than 1,700 barrels of raw industrial alcohol. Aboard her were 10 people. Her captain was Benjamin Briggs, an experienced and deeply religious seaman with a reputation for caution. He was not alone. He had brought his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. The rest were a crew of 7, hand-picked, men he trusted. This was not a doomed voyage on paper. The ship was sound. The captain was skilled. The weather was rough but ordinary for the season. There was no reason for the Mary Celeste to become one of the greatest mysteries in maritime history. And yet, nearly a month later, on the 4th of December, another ship spotted her. The Dei Gratia, a British vessel, was crossing the same waters near the Azores when her crew noticed something wrong. The Mary Celeste was moving strangely, yawing, her sails set in a careless, mismatched way, as if no one were steering her at all. The captain of the Dei Gratia, David Morehouse, knew Benjamin Briggs personally. The two men had dined together in New York just before the voyage, so Morehouse sent men across the water to investigate. What they found has haunted people ever since. The boarding party climbed onto a ship in good condition. She was not sinking. She was still seaworthy. Below deck there was enough food and fresh water to last 6 months. The crew's personal belongings were still in their quarters, their oilskin boots, their pipes, even valuables left behind. The cargo of alcohol sat almost entirely intact in the hold. But the people were gone. All 10 of them. How do you explain that? There were clues, but each one only deepened the riddle. The ship's single lifeboat, a small yawl, was missing. It appeared to have been deliberately launched, not torn away. A length of rope was found trailing from the ship into the sea. One of the ship's 2 pumps had been taken apart. There was some water sloshing between decks, though not enough to sink her. And the last entry in the captain's logbook was dated the 25th of November, more than a week before she was found, recording nothing alarming, only the ship's ordinary position near the islands. The ship's navigation instruments, the sextant and the chronometer, were gone. So were the ship's papers. Only the logbook remained. Think about what that tells you. Sailors who flee in a panic do not stop to gather their navigation tools. The missing instruments suggest the opposite, an orderly departure. Whoever left the Mary Celeste did so on purpose, taking the means to navigate with them, climbing into a small boat and rowing away from a perfectly good ship into the open Atlantic. Why would an experienced captain abandon a sound vessel for a tiny lifeboat in the middle of the ocean? When the Mary Celeste was brought to Gibraltar, an official inquiry tried to answer exactly that. It was led by the Attorney General there, a man named Frederick Solly Flood, and from the start he suspected foul play. He examined the ship for signs of violence. He looked for blood. He even suspected that the crew of the Dei Gratia might have murdered everyone aboard to claim the salvage reward. But the evidence refused to cooperate. There were no convincing signs of violence. Nothing was stolen. The cargo and the valuables were untouched, which made robbery and piracy almost impossible to believe. After months of investigation, the inquiry ended without a verdict. Officially, no one could say what had happened. So let yourself stand on that deck for a moment. The creak of the rigging, the wind in sails no hand had trimmed, a captain's cabin with a child's things still in it, and all around you, the gray, endless, silent Atlantic holding its secret. Here is where the story should have ended, as an honest, unsolved mystery. But something happened that turned it into a legend, and that turn is almost as revealing as the mystery itself. In 1884, a young and then unknown writer published a short story inspired by the case. His name was Arthur Conan Doyle, the man who would later create Sherlock Holmes. His story was fiction, but it was written so vividly and with so many invented details, ghastly scenes, a single survivor, dark conspiracies, that readers began to mistake it for fact. He even changed the ship's name slightly, and that misspelled version spread across the world. From that point on, the real Mary Celeste was buried under a mountain of myth. People added their own inventions. Sea monsters, giant squid, ghostly possession, curses. The actual documented facts, strange enough on their own, were drowned out by stories that never happened. So what most likely did happen? Strip away the legends, and historians who have studied the original records, including the maritime researcher Charles E.D. Fay, point to a chain of events that is tragic precisely because it is so ordinary. Remember the cargo. More than 1,700 barrels of raw alcohol. When the ship was finally unloaded, 9 of those barrels were found empty. The most widely accepted theory is that some of the alcohol had leaked and evaporated in the hold, and that fumes, or a sudden rumble of escaping vapor, perhaps even a small, harmless flash, convinced Captain Briggs that his ship was about to explode. Picture that decision. A cautious captain, his wife and small daughter aboard, suddenly certain the deck beneath them is a bomb. In a panic to save the people he loved, he orders everyone into the yawl. They climb down. They tie the little boat to the ship with a rope, planning to wait at a safe distance until the danger passed, then climb back aboard. And then the rope breaks. The Mary Celeste, sails still catching the wind, sails away from them. 10 people in an open boat watch their ship, their food, their water, their only real chance of survival, drift steadily out of reach. The ocean does the rest. It is only a theory. We will never know for certain. But it fits the evidence far better than any monster or curse. The launched lifeboat, the trailing rope, the missing instruments, the empty barrels, a sound ship sailing on without her people. And there is a quiet lesson buried in it. The Mary Celeste is famous as an impossible mystery, but the most likely truth is not impossible at all. It is a story about how a single moment of fear, even a reasonable one, can lead careful people to make one fatal choice. They did not vanish into another world. They almost certainly made a calm, logical decision to leave a danger that may not even have been real, and that decision cost them everything. We remember the empty ship. We rarely remember why it was empty. And in the gap between the two, the human mind reaches for sea monsters and ghosts, because somehow that is easier to accept than the truth, that the sea can swallow 10 people whole, quietly, and never tell us why. So imagine one more time climbing aboard that ship. The set table, the child's toys, the food still in the hold, everything in its place, and everyone gone, not taken by a monster. Just 10 ordinary people who stepped off a sound ship into the open sea and were never seen again.